But me, your man, Louie Tee, welcome to the 2018 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series where your man Louie Tee aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2018 NFL Draft using our baseball grading scale. Single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series as we cannot tell how these players are going to pan out, and I don't want to discount any of these young men before they get their chance in the National Football League. And so we'll get a score for each and every single player selected in said team's draft. We'll apply bonuses when necessary, divide by the number of picks, which will yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. We'll then move on to the next team in the series picked by you. That's right, you, the viewer, are in total control as this is the You Pick format. Simply be the first to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating two things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Some examples: Titans next, 10 next, Titans. You get where I'm going with this. You'll want to be as concise and direct as you can possibly be because there are some fast individuals out there waiting for these videos to upload. And if you want to get your team up next, you gotta be as fast as possible. That being said, next team up in the series is, you guessed it, the Tennessee Titans. And last year was sort of a breakthrough season for the Titans of sorts. It's tough to really build upon what they did when you pretty much hit the reset button in terms of the coaching staff and bringing all new pieces and parts up in that coaching situation. New head coach in Mike Vrabel, new offensive coordinator in Matt LaFleur. So a number of different moving parts with this Titans team despite making the postseason for the first time since Marcus Mariota has been at the helm. But nonetheless, GM John Robinson has made it a point of emphasis to go out and improve this defense that really didn't stand a chance versus the Patriots in the playoffs last season. And look, this offense, they've done some things over the last couple of drafts to try to fortify the offense. Derrick Henry's going to get his shot to be the lead back this year with no more DeMarco Murray. You're hoping to see a quantum leap in a much healthier Corey Davis in year two. Obviously, Marcus Mariota's health is the key to all of this offensively. But what about the defense? I've always said that the Titans won't be a good defense until they can get pressure on the quarterback. We saw just how much playmaking ability they have in the secondary with Kevin Byard. And now you add in a guy like Malcolm Butler, and all of a sudden now this secondary is starting to come together with Adoree Jackson, Logan Ryan, and now, like I said, the aforementioned Malcolm Butler. But you still have to get pressure on the quarterback. Those guys are only as good as the pressure up front. And I've always said Brian Orakpo's nice, but he's not good enough. And same can be said for Derek Morgan. Those guys are clones of one another. They're good enough to get you by, but they're not good enough to take you to the next level. And so I've always said, when are the Titans going to invest in getting pressure on the quarterback? Well, GM John Robinson did exactly that in this very compact draft. Look, I don't know if I've ever seen a draft this short. I joke around and I talk about Dave Gettleman and the drafts of the Panthers over the years where they take 5 players. This is even shorter than that. They got in, they got out, they got what they needed and what they came for, and they left. I'm not mad at it. I'm not glad at it. All I know is that they've gotten much better on one side of the football via this draft. And they even said, hey, let's get us a backup quarterback while we're here. So let's talk about this 2018 NFL draft for the Tennessee Titans and what they look to accomplish here with this haul. Only 4 players, but it was a very impactful 4. Let's jump right into it as we start in the first round, 22nd pick overall, linebacker out of Alabama. Rashad Evans is the selection to get this draft underway. It's not a surprise that you get Mike Vrabel as your new head coach, and the first thing you do is you look to fortify the defense. You lose Avery Williamson in the offseason, and so there was a void there at linebacker for a guy that can cover in space, a guy that can do multiple things, be a run and chase linebacker, play sideline to sideline. And look, At the beginning of the process, and I've already broken down Rashad Evans, so I'm not going to do that here. So if you're looking for a thorough breakdown of Rashad Evans and what he brings to the table, you're going to have to go to the Louie Tee Network on YouTube, find the playlist section, and click on the 2018 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series. There you'll find a breakdown of not only Rashad Evans, but all of the other prospects I was able to get to prior to the draft. That being said, Rashad Evans is a unique case for me because he's one of the few that, and this happens periodically, but it doesn't happen very often, where I formulate an opinion on a guy, and as I watch more tape, I become more and more fond of a guy and more accepting of what he is, and I start to see what other features he brings to the table. I was a little closed-minded when it came to Rashad Evans, somewhat because of the track record or lack thereof of linebackers coming from Alabama. They haven't had the best success in this league of late. And you can go down the list of the guys that have come from Alabama. We'll see what happens with Reuben Foster, if he can stay clean off the field, what his career on the field might look like. C.J. Mosley has been hot and cold for me. When he's good, he's really good. When he's not, he's average. But there's the Reggie Raglins of the world that are in there, and there's a number of other guys we could go down the list and look at. Nonetheless, I look at Rashad Evans, and I said that his comp was Reggie Ragland. I was wrong. It's not Reggie Ragland. This guy is a lot more explosive, a lot more dynamic. And the fact is, not only is this guy a much better athlete than Reggie Ragland ever was and currently is, as he's constituted in the league right now, but this guy also brings an added dimension that this Titans team sorely needs and really lacks right now, and that's the ability to get to the quarterback. This guy can rush the passer on third downs. They asked him to do that at Alabama, and I thought he did it really well. And like I said, the more tape I watched, indirectly watching other guys play against Alabama and getting to see more and more Rashad Evans, I became more and more impressed with what this guy brought to the table. At first, I wasn't so sure that this guy was even worthy of a first-round pick. As I continued to watch him from afar, I realized quickly that I was wrong about Rashad Evans. And not only is this guy worthy of a first-round pick, he may exceed my expectations because of the added benefit of what this guy can do as a pass rusher. He's very explosive going up the field, trying to get to the quarterback. And he actually has some moves in his Rolodex as well. So I was thoroughly impressed with Rashad Evans as I watched him. Even more so, I have to take back some of the things that I said about him previously. This guy is a lot better than Reggie Ragland. That is not his comp. And I think that this is a really good pickup for the Tennessee Titans at a position of need, and a guy that also can double as a pass rusher in obvious passing situations. Love what this guy brings to the table from a coverage standpoint, from a tackling standpoint, from an aggression standpoint. The Titans need more aggressive players up front and guys that can get to the quarterback, and that's also an added benefit that you get with Rashad Evans as well. So really think this was a really quality pick here in the first round for the Tennessee Titans. One that was desperately needed, and they delivered. And they didn't know that this guy was going to fall to them in the first round. They got sort of lucky because there weren't many first-round linebackers to be had in this draft. And you got one of the few that can also rush the passer. So it was a double whammy for the Tennessee Titans, and really a no-brainer when it was all said and done in the first round. 22nd pick overall. Linebacker out of Alabama, Rashad Evans, for me, is...
Hits it high! Hits it deep! It is out of here!
As we move to the second round, 41st overall selection, edge rusher out of Boston College, Harold Landry, is the selection. So once again, another guy that I've already broken down in the Draft Prospects 101 series. So if you're looking for a thorough breakdown of Harold Landry, go there. I will say this, though. I love this pick. I love the fact that GM John Robinson identified a huge need, a glaring need on this Titans defense, and went after it aggressively. Not only did you get a guy in the first round that can rush the passer, you doubled down and got probably the purest pass rusher in this draft. I've said this already. I said it on his breakdown. He's not the best pass rusher in this draft. I think that distinction goes to Bradley Chubb. But if you're asking me who's the most natural, who's the purest pass rusher, it's Harold Landry, and I don't know if it's even close. This guy's ability to bend the edge like Gumby is unmatched in this particular draft. It reminds me of shades of DeMarcus Ware with the ability to just bend. Again, a lot of these tackles don't want any part of a guy bending at a 45-degree angle and getting around the edge, and that's what Harold Landry can do when healthy. Wasn't the healthiest in 2017, but if you go back to 2016, this guy was dominant for BC, and I think if the Titans are getting that player that we saw in 2016 versus the guy that was banged up and practically playing on one leg in 2017, they're going to be in business. I've talked about the secondary and how it's improved this offseason through free agency, and we'll talk about another guy that's going to help it improve even more so in this draft. Now you're looking at the front end, that front seven improving with the likes of Rashad Evans, and now a guy like Harold Landry, who is an elite pass rusher, And in this league where it is paramount that you get pressure on the quarterback, this is a guy that can do that in spades. John Robinson identified that, moved up in the draft, gave up what he had to give up to get one of the purest pass rushers in this draft. And I honestly don't know how this guy lasted this long in the draft. I thought he was going to go off the board in the first round for sure. There's a shortage of pass rushers, natural pass rushers in this league. And to allow a guy like Harold Landry to slip to the second round, this is a no-brainer for the Titans to move up and get a guy that they probably thought was going to come off the board in the first round. He fell right into their wheelhouse, into an area where they felt comfortable trading up to go get him, and they pulled the trigger in the second round, 41st overall selection, edge rusher out of BC, Harold Landry. For me, you already know what it is.
Hits one high, hits it deep, it is out of here!
For those of you scoring at home, back-to-back jacks for the Tennessee Titans to start out their 2018 NFL draft. As we move on to their third pick in this draft, all the way in the fifth round, Titans made a number of moves to get the guys that they got in this draft. Fifth round, 152nd overall selection, defensive back out of Arizona, Dane Cruikshank is the selection. So Dane Cruikshank, coming out of Arizona, 6'1", 209 pounds. Let me first say, this has nothing to do with this breakdown. I love the Arizona Wildcat uniforms. And first of all, red is my favorite color, so go figure. But, man, they got some nice color combinations, man. I know this has nothing to do with this breakdown, but I just felt compelled to say that. Let's move on, though. Dane Cruikshank is a very unique individual. He first jumped onto my radar at the NFL Scouting Combine, where he just lit it up. I walked away probably more impressed with him, and him and Troy Apke were the two guys that really dropped my jaw when watching the Combine, because those two guys lit it up to the point where I had to go put on just a smidget of tape just to see if the athleticism that I saw at the Combine matched what the tape that I was going to put on, and it did in both instances, and especially with Dane Cruikshank, because this is a guy here that fits today's NFL safety. He fits into what today's NFL safety is looking like. We saw Minkah Fitzpatrick go early in this draft as a 6'1", 6 foot, 200-pound safety. You see where this league is going with the guys that look like corners, can play a little bit of corner, but is asked to play the safety position because they can play over the slot. That's what this league is morphing into, a league where almost like positionless basketball, where, look, 1 through 5, who gives a shit? Put your best 5 on the court and let's see if we can win some ball games. It's starting to turn that way into the secondary. And hell, it's even bleeding into the linebacker position. These linebackers are looking more and more like safeties. And so you're starting to see a almost positionless safety position where, look, man, look, I don't give a damn if you're actually a true safety or if you're just a corner posing as a safety. Really, I don't give a shit. Can you cover? Can you tackle? Good. Get on the field. See if you can't help us in some form or capacity. And that's how I feel about Dane Cruikshank. He's a guy that has done a number of things for Arizona, and I think it was that versatility that got him drafted here by the Titans in the 5th round. I actually thought his athleticism coupled with what he did at Arizona would get him drafted a lot sooner than the 5th round, but we'll see if this is to the benefit of the Titans getting their hands on a guy like Dane Cruikshank in the 5th round. This guy was a team captain at Arizona. Don't discount that. I always make mention of guys that are team captains because you want those kinds of players in your locker room. 4'4", 140, 25 reps of 2 1/4, 38.5-inch vert, 10-foot broad. Do I need to say any more about this guy's athleticism and how he tore the combine to shreds? He was a JUCO transfer, so he only played 2 years at Arizona, but as soon as he got there, he jumped on the field immediately at the cornerback position. He then was asked to play the quote-unquote spur position for the Wildcats in his senior season, which is pretty much a hybrid nickel slash linebacker slash safety position. And so that was the position that pretty much got him drafted by the Tennessee Titans, as they look at him as a safety. Only 2 teams actually looked at Dane Cruikshank as a safety. The other teams looked at him as a nickel, which is pretty fascinating in itself, which just tells you what this guy brings to the table. Career stats, 5 INTs in just 2 seasons, so the guy is going after the football. 12 PBUs, 1 forced fumble, 7 tackles for loss, and a sack and a half in his career. And he's got some ball skills. And I'll tell you this guy's rap sheet and the body count that he has on his resume a little bit later on as we get into his breakdown. But measurables at 6'1", 209, that's more of a corner frame than it is a safety frame. But again, as I mentioned at the top of this breakdown, that's what this league is kind of going to. The safety that can play over the slot. And in this case here, and this is a unique case here with Dane Cruikshank, similar to Minkah Fitzpatrick, if you need him to, in a pinch, this guy could go outside and play out wide. He did it in college at Arizona in his junior season. Speed, look, this guy has, that 4.41 is legit, folks. I watched him, and I went back and watched some 2016 tape to be familiar with him as a corner, and then I watched a ton of 2017 tape as the spur, as a pretty much hybrid linebacker safety nickel for Arizona in 2017. But I went back to 2016 just to get a feel for what this guy was as a corner, and I watched him run step for step, stride for stride, 50 yards down the field with John Ross, a guy who set the combine record, if you remember, just a short 2 years ago at the combine. He was right there with him. Now, he did commit pass interference, but he panicked. He didn't need to do that. He was right there in great position. He started molesting and groping John Ross if they were going up for the football. He didn't need to do that. He owned the size advantage. He was right there. All you do was go up, leap, and take the football from him. Instead, he decided to yank him down to propel himself up to try to go get the football, and he was flagged for it, but he was right there. The guy can run, okay? Athleticism, I talked about him tearing up the combine. The athleticism is on full display if you turn on the tape and watch Dane Cruikshank. Acceleration, I just told you he ran with John Ross. So when he opens up and runs, there's a pick that he has against Oregon where he scores a touchdown on a pick 6, picks up a penalty. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But you get to see him open up there. The guy can run. He can flat out run. Agility and change of direction. I think this is what allows him to play in the slot. If you don't have good agility and change of direction, you can't play in the slot, because the slot to me is much tougher than playing out as a boundary corner, because the receiver has pretty much a three-way go of it. 4 if you count coming back to the football. But really, as a slot, the corner doesn't really know if the receiver is going out, going in, or going up the field. And like I said, he could even come back to the quarterback. There's just so many things that can happen, and there's so much space. Unlike out as a boundary corner where you've got the sideline as an extra defender, you're in a slot, you're in no man's land. There is nothing but space and opportunity, and if you don't have good change of direction and agility, you will get smoked by some of these quick jitterbug type receivers in the slot. And Dane Cruikshank, for a guy 6'1" with his frame, actually has pretty solid change of direction, which allows him to play as a nickel in the slot. Awareness and anticipation is solid for him, which allows him to make plays on the football. Look, locate, and contest. He does look back for the football. Again, you don't get 5 picks in 2 seasons. And these weren't lucky. Someone tipped the football in the air, Johnny on the spot, right place, right time type interceptions. No, this guy made some plays on the football. Whether you go back to 2016 versus Washington, where he picked off Jake Browning, where he went up and took the football in a one-on-one situation, or you go and watch him pick off Sam Darnold in the end zone, or Sam Darnold is trying to force it into quadruple coverage and he yanks the football out of the air. This guy made a bunch of plays, and it's because he looks, locates, and then is able to contest and go up and try to take the football away. Ball skills. Listen to this guy's rap sheet. Listen to the body count that he has in the Pac-12, all right? Now, this is what you call some real nasty work after dark, all right? Picked off Jake Browning, Josh Rosen, and Sam Darnold, all right? So he's got all of those guys under his belt making plays in that Pac-12 conference. I don't know if there's another player that can actually say that. They've picked off all 3 of those quarterbacks. Tackling, willingness to tackle. He's a guy that is willing to tackle. I do have a pet peeve of mine with him, and it's his willingness to just take on blockers and not go after the ball carrier. He much rather just take on a block or play behind. Bless me, God save me. Excuse me. He much rather play behind a block than go be aggressive, beat the blocker to the spot, and make a play. I can't tell you how many times I watched him, especially the Oregon game, where he's just playing behind block after block, taking on blockers and allowing for big runs. And I'm like, bro, go make a play. Go do something other than fill a gap. And so there's something to be said about doing that when it's called to do that. Sometimes filling a gap is your responsibility. Someone else needs to make the play. But then there's times where, hey, you got a shot to go be impactful. Don't just stand there. Do something. And I think sometimes he's a little bit reluctant to go and make a play in fear of giving up a much bigger play. So sometimes you just got to be willing to shoot your gun. And when he is willing to do that, this guy is an exceptional tackler and football player. Man coverage ability. Watched him versus Purdue break up a pass. Watched him versus Washington pick off a pass, as I mentioned, on Jake Browning in 2016. So he can do that, a little bit of that. Zone coverage, I think he's a little bit better in zone coverage where he's able to eyeball the quarterback and see what he wants to do with the football. Against Oregon, he was able to pick off a pass and take it the distance in zone coverage. Against Washington, he was able to make a nice play on, like I said, John Ross running with him step for step. He was in cover 3. John Ross was running a skinny post deep. He opened up his hips, turned and ran, and was right there with him. And like I said, he panicked. All he had to do was out-jump John Ross for the football, which he was fully capable of doing, and he just panicked. Nonetheless, he's got the ability to play both man and zone. Blitzing capabilities, he's a capable blitzer. And when you're running that fast, you have the ability, and I watched him come off the edge versus Purdue untouched, got to the quarterback. It's a thing of beauty when a guy that fast gets a free hit and a free rush at the quarterback. He can do some damage. So I'd like to see the Titans try to take advantage of his ability to blitz. And they did that at Arizona. I'd like to see the Titans do the same thing. Field coverage and range. I put down in my notes, outstanding field coverage when aggressive. I told you this guy can be passive aggressive at times and kind of sitting on his hands waiting for something to happen instead of making something happen. When he is aggressive, he's fun to watch. When he's passive aggressive, he's a guy that can be taken advantage of. Versatility, this is another reason I think he was drafted. He can play the slot, he can be a buzz defender, he can be a box safety, hybrid linebacker, a nickel defender, and then he can be a cornerback if you need him to be in a pinch. So there's a lot that this guy brings to the table. Really think that the Titans are really fortifying their secondary with this selection. You have Jonathan Cyprien, you have the aforementioned Kevin Byard, add Dane Cruikshank to that mix, and now you feel like you've got a really good trio of safeties. Then you look at the cornerback position, as I mentioned, adding in Malcolm Butler, already having another Patriot in Logan Ryan coming on board last year, and then Adoree Jackson, your first-round pick a season ago. You feel good about this secondary, adding a guy like Dane Cruikshank to the mix. And there's all types of different flavors, and that's what you need in this league, guys that can fit certain roles. And I think Dane Cruikshank is a guy that's going to come in and help fit a role that the Titans previously didn't have a guy that could actually fit that role. And so in the 5th round, 152nd pick overall, defensive back out of Arizona, Dane Cruikshank for me is. For those of you scoring at home, Dane Cruikshank was a double. And to wrap up this very nice, neat, and compact Titans draft in the 6th round, 199th overall selection, quarterback out of Washington State, Luke Falk is the pick. Luke Falk was my guy, man. I had done a video on Luke Falk about 2 years ago because I thought he was going to come out in last year's draft because he was hot then. And I thought he had a chance to come out, and I think he would have been drafted a lot higher than the 6th round had he come out in last year's draft instead of this year's draft. But nonetheless, he went back to school. He was benched several times. Mike Leach just had a quick hook. There were some games where he really struggled. I mean, you go look at that Cal game. He threw 5 interceptions in that game. Some of them his fault. Some of them the fault of, bad protection. He got his ass whooped at Washington State. Hats off to Luke Falk for hanging in there and being a tough soldier because they threw it so much that he took a pounding and he just kept coming back for more. But he was awful in that Cal game. Forced some balls, made some mistakes. That's a game they shouldn't have lost. That was their first loss of the season, as a matter of fact, on the road versus Cal. They had another loss where he struggled versus Washington late in the season in the Apple Cup game, where he was dreadful in that game as well. So there were some games where he struggled this season, and I wasn't upset at Mike Leach for benching him and going to Tyler Helinski. May he rest in peace. But nonetheless, Luke Falk is a guy that first burst onto my scene, my radar, back in 2015. And if you remember, this was a classic Luke Falk performance on the road in Eugene versus Oregon, when Oregon was actually Oregon, when they were still good and still clinging to that Marcus Mariota fame, even though Marcus Mariota had already moved on to the league. They still had a little bit of that Marcus Mariota shine and luster. And so in 2015, they didn't realize that they were garbage yet. So they were still a good team. And Luke Falk went in there and punished those boys. I mean, he put on a clinic. One of my favorite Luke Falk games to watch. I was floored at his performance. Then it made me think that this guy had potential first overall selection in the draft. Potential. It never materialized. That might have been his best performance in his career against a good team, not the Eastern Washingtons of the world where he carved up. But he had an Oregon State game in there where he threw 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. But that performance against Oregon on the road when Oregon still had the swag, that was pretty damn good. And I still hold on to that. I still see that in my mind, and I still see Luke Falk as a guy that can do that. And so I love the selection here because it gives the Titans a certified backup. I know you went out and got Blaine Gabbert, and I think for the purposes of competitive reasons, he's going to be your backup quarterback going into the season. But give Luke Falk 1 year to learn the system and the nuances of the NFL, and he'll be your backup next year, and you can cut bait with Blaine Gabbert and just carry 2 quarterbacks. But for right now, you're going to have to carry 3 this season because I don't see you cutting Luke Falk. That being said, and we can see if Luke Falk doesn't play well in the preseason, maybe you're able to sneak him on the practice squad. But I don't see that happening. If you're the Titans, you can't run the risk of cutting this guy and him not clearing waivers. I think you like him too much, and there's too much here for you to cut him. I think he's a really good backup option in this league, the kind that the Eagles have. And I think that's essentially what you're going for here, is you're looking for that Carson Wentz, you have Marcus Mariota, and that Nicholas Foles and Luke Falk. Similar style of play, similar conference, both played in the Pac-12. Foles might have played in it when it was the Pac-10, but nonetheless, I think that's what you're looking for. Even though contrasting style, similar to the Eagles, those 2 quarterbacks aren't similar to one another. Wentz is a off-cuff scrambler, a guy that can kill you from within the pocket and outside of the pocket, extends plays. That's what Mariota is. Luke Falk, not so much. And Nicholas Foles, not so much. So same kind of premise here that the Eagles have pretty much put out there as a blueprint, and I think the Titans are trying to follow that here. 6'4", 215, really good size for an NFL quarterback. You look at some of his numbers in 2015, 447 completions out of 644 attempts. As you can see, they threw it a ton. 69% clip there for 4,561 yards, 38 touchdowns, 8 INTs. He was hot. 16, I thought he was going to come out after this season. 443 completions out of 633 attempts for a 70% completion percentage. 4,468 yards, 38 touchdowns once again, this time 11 INTs. And then to finish up his career, 357 completions out of 534 attempts for a 66.9, essentially 67% completion percentage, 3,593 yards, 30 touchdowns, 13 INTs. So you can see a precipitous drop-off in that final year on the campus of Wazoo. So measurables, I already talked about him having really good quarterback size. Arm talent, I put down in my notes, 3-level arm, not a cannon, but can get it done and get the football where it needs to go. Athleticism, it's non-existent. And I made the comparison to Nicholas Foles. They're not the same guy, but they both share the characteristic of having essentially 2 left feet. Luke Falk isn't running anywhere. He didn't run a 40, and that was intentional because he knew he wasn't going to run very well. And what the hell? Quarterbacks don't have to run it, so he didn't because he can't. He's not fast. Throwing mechanics, nice, compact, quick release, and it's over the top, which I love. You're 6'4", use your 6'4" frame to help you not get the ball batted. Can't stand guys that are 6'4", 6'5", but they throw in these 3-quarter deliveries, or they throw slightly below over the top, and it allows for guys to get their hands up in passing lanes and bat the football down. Not a lot of batted balls for Luke Falk. It does help when you play in a pass-happy offense that does get the football out of your hands relatively quick, does negate a lot of opportunities to bat footballs down, but even when he dropped back in the pocket, there weren't a lot of bat downs of Luke Falk offerings. Footwork, quick feet, he sets them quick, and he can even throw with them not set. So I really like his footwork for a guy that pretty much exclusively played from the shotgun and the pistol. There was no under center action for Luke Falk whatsoever in that air raid attack out there with Mike Leach. Pocket awareness, we'll come back to that. That's a con. And pretty much my biggest con with him. Pocket mobility, he can elude the rush to step up and will zig and zag inside the pocket to keep the play alive, but it usually ends in a sack. Again, that's where that lack of athleticism kind of comes into play. He'll fight because his offensive line was horrendous. It was putrid. He got his ass torn to shreds. Some of it his fault, a lot of it his fault, but some of it was the fault. Really, it was a 50-50 split between him and the offensive line in terms of the amount of sacks and hits that he took while at Washington State. Accuracy, short to intermediate, great intermediate touch, especially over the middle. He has such feathery, soft touch. Similar to Marcus Mariota. I've told you this many a times. Marcus Mariota's best footballs are over the middle of the football field. It's so soft. It's so feathery. It's drugstore cotton, soft. Same thing can be said for Luke Falk. There are some throws where I'm like, bruh, how did you do that? How did you finesse that pass over those two defenders right into the waiting arms of your running back or the tight end or the receiver? He was able to do that on a consistent basis, and he gets the football out of his hands quickly, accurate, short to intermediate. Where he struggles, to me, is with the deep ball. A lot of times, he's a flick of the wrist type of guy. He'll put it on the money one time, and then the next 2 or 3 times, he'll be off the mark with the deep ball. I think he needs a little bit of work with his deep ball. Nonetheless, moxie and poise. He took a beating at Wazoo. Always got up and came back for more and is not afraid to stare down the gun barrel. There is a play versus Oregon in 2017 that I thought was quintessential Luke Falk, and to me, the epitome of what this guy represents in the pocket. He will stay in the pocket like a parent going back in to save their child from a burning building. And if I have to stay here and die in this building trying to get my child out, then so be it. He will not leave the pocket a lot of times. He will stay in that pocket even as it's crumbling. He sees the ashes. He saw the only exit to the building crumble right before him, and yet he's still in the pocket. Here comes an Oregon defender on a late zone dog blitz, absolutely coming to tear his head off. Luke Falk stares down the gun barrel, takes the vicious shot, delivers a BB over the middle of the field, about 23 yards down the field, right over the middle to his receiver for a great completion. And that's the toughness that this guy brings to the table. I love it. That's that poise and that moxie that Luke Falk possesses. Leadership intangibles, I think Luke Falk's unflappable. I mean, I watched him in that game against Cal where he threw 5 interceptions, and he wasn't fazed. He was ready to keep coming out guns a-blazing. He didn't look dejected. There are some times where he takes some shots and he gets up slow and he looks a little rattled, but throwing an interception doesn't faze Luke Falk. And he's one of those guys that believes in his arm, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But processing speed is something else I think he's hot and cold with. Sometimes I think he stays on some of his early reads a little too long. There are times where he realizes I got to dump it down to my back. He does a great job of getting the football out to the back. So there's times where he gets rid of it quickly, sometimes where he doesn't get rid of it quick enough, and then there are times where he just flat out misses some things. But all in all, I think his processing speed is solid. Accuracy on the move, he doesn't move very well, so his accuracy on the move isn't all that great. But then there's a play versus USC in a game that they won in 2017 where he's outside the pocket, scrambling towards the sidelines, has a defender draped all over him, tackling him. He flicks it down the field 40 yards into the corner of the end zone, right to his receiver. It is one of the most gorgeous throws you will see from a guy that is essentially being tackled. It reminds me of that Carson Wentz throw on Sunday Night Football versus the Seattle Seahawks, where I've never seen anything like that, where Carson Wentz essentially was going down, damn near tackle, and flicked it 35 yards down the field to his receiver. Same thing with Luke Falk here, and the guy just dropped it in the end zone. Perfect throw, right through his hands. God damn it. In any event, but that's those opportunities, those types of throws are few and far between with him outside the pocket. Nonetheless, timing and anticipation, I think his timing and anticipation within the framework of a play, especially when he knows where he's going with the football, is outstanding. It's one of his best attributes. He gets it out of his hands very, very quickly. Decision-making, I don't love his decision-making. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things that will get him into trouble a lot of times. When he makes mistakes, when he's got that 2, 3, 4 interception game, a lot of it is him squeezing the football into some tight windows, into some really foggy and muggy coverages where he shouldn't be going with the football. When you take enough shots, though, and you just want to get the football out of your hand hot potato style, you'll make some of those bad decisions. And I think that is some of the blame, but some of it is him trusting his arm and thinking he can fit the football into some spots where he probably shouldn't go with the football. But in any event, his final con, or his only con for me really, is his pocket awareness. I put that in my notes. His internal clock is broken. Too many times Luke Falk will stand in the pocket for 3, 4 seconds, 4.5 seconds, and take a sack. And at the last second realize, damn, I've been standing here a pretty long time. Maybe I should get out. Too late, bro. Pockets collapse. There's nowhere for you to go. You're not mobile. You're not nimble. Where you going to go? Down for another sack? So he's a guy that I just feel like needs to do a better job of knowing his surroundings, having that internal clock go off, and just getting rid of the football. It's okay to throw it away. Don't take sacks unnecessarily. He's one of those guys that on 3rd and 7 from the 27-yard line will take an 11-yard sack and push you out of field goal range. He's one of those types of guys. Get rid of the goddamn football. His internal clock is broken. It needs to be fixed. But I'm still a Luke Falk fan, man. And he's better than anything you got on the roster in terms of a backup. And like I said, he's going to be a quality backup in this league for many years to come. And I love this selection of Luke Falk in the 6th round, 199th overall selection. Quarterback out of Washington State, Luke Falk, for me to wrap up this Titans draft is... So that's going to do it for the Titans draft. If you're looking for the scores for each of these players, go to the website, LouieTeeNetwork.net. Make sure you like and share this video. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. And I thought this was a very compact draft. Obviously, only 4 players. But I thought it was an impactful draft, especially on the defensive side of football. 3 out of the 4 players were on that side of football. 2 in the front 7 where the Titans desperately needed help. I really love the fact that I think they have a shot now to get elite pressure on the quarterback. I really think this was an impactful draft. Despite it only being 4 players, I think John Robinson, what he set out to accomplish, he completed in the 2018 NFL draft. Let's look at the score for the Tennessee Titans. For those of you scoring at home, Luke Falk was a double, and the Titans draft overall was an incomplete grade. How can I grade 4 players? I mean, you got to have at least 5 players. I prefer 6, preferably 6, but I'll take 5. If you got 5, we can do something with that. 4, that's an incomplete draft. All right, but nonetheless, an impactful one for the Tennessee Titans. That's going to do it for the Titans and their draft wrap-up here on the Louie Tee Network. Make sure you continue to support the movement, whether you do that via YouTube, Patreon, PayPal, or whatever means you want to explore. All of that is down in the description below. If you can, I thank you greatly. And make sure you also check out the Louie Tee Network podcast, available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Music Play, and the website, LouieTeeNetwork.net. I'm your man, Louie Tee, signing off. Plenty more where that came from, as there are more draft wrap-ups to come, so don't you go anywhere. Remember, we're changing the game one video at a time. I'm your man, Louie Tee. See you next time. Have a good one.